بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. One of the Islamic laws that I would like to mention tonight is about those that are sick or those that are ill. Many people ask, and again, this situation and this circumstance, each person has to individually see which category or what applies to them. Nobody can say, you have to do this specifically. They can give you the rules, but you have to see yourself if that mawdu or that misdaq applies to you yourself. They ask in one of the organizations that answers the questions of one of the maraja, they say, what about if a person was ill, but fasting would not cause them any complications? They ask about a person that might have a minor cold, but they know that they don't have a fear of being harmed, they don't have a fear of other complications arising from fasting. For example, if somebody is sick and they're not afraid of getting infections or they need to have antibiotics, they know that they will recover. They can fast and they'll recover, alhamdulillah. So for this person that knows, basically he'll recover, he knows there won't be any complications, he's not afraid of harm, they have to fast. They have to fast. But not for a person that has these medical complications. For such a person that has medical complications and has fear of harm or has a sound concern that it will harm them or prolong their disease, they cannot fast, right? For example, a person has a condition, he has a heart condition, has a kidney condition, an eye condition where they need to drink fluids all the time or else they're going to be sick. That person cannot fast. But a person that does not have these worries, knows that I'm sick and I'm going to feel better soon, they have to fast. And we mentioned before that if a person, it lasts one entire year, their sickness, they have diabetes, they have, say, an eye disease, a problem with the entire year, they have to pay the fidya, right? And they do not have qada anymore. They don't have to make up their fast. They pay 750 grams of food items, which is equal to about $5 a day, to an organization or to the poor that will provide food items for them, not just the money. That's a good question. If a person has, and that medication is, if he doesn't take it, he'll be harmed, right? He has to take that medication. Okay, the doctor. The brother is asking, the dear brother is asking, if a person has to take a medication, say every 4 hours, every 6 hours, and it's something that the doctor told him, prescribed him to do, now can they fast or not fast? This again goes back to that person. Is that person, does he have a sound concern from what the doctor is telling him? He's advising him, don't do this, you're going to be harmed or not. If he basically has a sound concern, or if he does rely on what the doctor says, then he would not fast and he would have to take his medication, and he could could perform the other invalidators of fasting. He wouldn't just limit himself, say for example, to the medication, and then they would stop doing all the other invalidators of fasting. No, they would not fast at all. They would be like a person that doesn't even fast, and they would have to take their medication, and if they get better in the year, they have to make it up. If they don't get better, that condition lasts one entire year, they don't make it up, they pay basically $5 every day that they did not fast to an organization. This organization says $5, but around 750 grams or 1.7 pounds of food items to the poor. So having medication or pills itself is something that would now allow us to fast as long as we have a sound concern or we have khawf or fear that our condition will get worse. In this case, do they have to get a specific, do they have medication for that, right? Okay, okay. About the other questions, well, inshallah, answered later on, but in general, you're saying that this doesn't have to do with sickness, this is just a person that has Alzheimer's and doesn't know what they are doing anymore. That depends, again, how severe it is. Maybe a person, just to answer this from the top of my head, maybe a person has severe Alzheimer's where they can't even function, they don't remember anything. I mean, they don't even have maybe taklif anymore. They don't have any obligation, right? They don't remember anything. A person that has aql, that is sane, a person that can function, right, has taklif. But if it's a minor, maybe Alzheimer's at the beginning stages and inshallah doesn't advance and they forget things here and there, unless there's specific medication that they have to take or it brings hardship or it's going to make their condition worse or they're afraid that their condition will be worse, then they wouldn't fast. So that we can learn our ahkam and inshallah act upon it, please give us salawat. We were talking about, the topic was worshiping Allah, being a servant of Allah, and being an abd, which in Arabic is ubudiyat. And we say this is different than being a worshipper, which is being an abid. We have an abid and we have an abd. An abd is a person that submits to the commands of Allah fully. An abid is a person that worships, but an abid can sometimes not also be an abd. Shaitan did worship Allah, but at the end he broke Allah's commands and instructions. And we said basically to review, and so that this topic can be continued if we didn't participate in the other, or to remind us from the other lessons. We said that one of the best ways to understand worship, one of the best ways to understand servitude is to look at the opposite. What is the opposite of submitting to Allah? Right? It is basically rejecting Allah, right? Rejecting Him. The core principle in Islam, it's very simple, and it's in the narrations. Innal Islama huwa taslim. Islam is taslim, submission. That's it. Therefore, the opposite of Islam, kufr, would be not to submit to Allah, would be to reject Allah. And to understand taslim and submitting and being a slave, we have to understand being arrogant and rejecting Allah, and understanding the fact that when somebody separates himself from God, when somebody says that I am self-sufficient, I don't need Allah anymore, two things happen here. One is that he goes into the realm of the authority of shaitan, and he has acquired an attribute of shaitan, which is istikbar, which is fighting against Allah, and that goes into his heart. The second is slowly his nafs, his ego, his soul becomes more arrogant and more arrogant, and the desires, his carnal desires become more strong, and his negative desires become more strong and stronger, that he becomes a slave of himself. As the Quran says, his nafs becomes an ilah, it becomes a god, right? So this is the danger and the lifestyle that somebody, if they choose to reject God and to leave God, is they will have a lifestyle where their nafs, their ego, their soul, and their desires begin to control them. When it comes to temptations of the dunya and of the world, they cannot say no anymore. And their life is guided by and ruled by the world and materialism. In a narration, so there are these two sides we can choose. The side of God and the side of rejecting God or denying God or forgetting about God. In a narration, the Imam Ali alayhi salam in Qur'an al-Hikam says it very beautifully. He says that you see how the sun is and you see how nighttime is. There's night and does the sun and the night, can they mix? Can it be the sun be out and also be night at the same time? No. لا يجتمعان. كما أن الشمس والليل لا يجتمعان. Just how the sun and the night cannot mix. Love of Allah, love of God, and love of the world cannot mix. حب الله وحب الدنيا لا يجتمعان. So basically from this narration there are two paths for us to take. Either the path of Hubbullah, which is the love of Allah, or Hubb of the dunya. They cannot mix. And we say that in societies that have left God, materialism is a big problem. The nafs is a big problem. The ego is a big problem. Being conceited, being selfish is a big problem. And they become of the mustakbirin, those that arrogantly reject Allah. The nafs, according to some of the studies or some of the things that I've learned, the nafs is always will bother us. The nafs, as in the narration say, is one of your greatest enemies. Even after the time that the 12th Imam, he comes back and there's a government where he brings Tawhid for everybody, he brings order, brings justice for everybody. They say the nafs still exists in people. But here, the difference between now and then is that the nafs is bringing us to the hellfire if we listen to it. But there, it will just bring us down to lower stations. Instead of choosing the best option, we'll choose a lower option. So even then, after the hukumat in the government of Imam Zaman, salamullah alayhi, ajjalallahu ta'ala faraja, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The nafs and our desires and our ego and our soul, our carnal desires will still exist, but it will be in a different way. And this is one of the best ways, we said, to learn and guard ourselves, to submit to God, is to learn about the paths of shirk and polytheism and arrogance and the systems and the civilizations of arrogance, to separate ourselves. If we don't, it's like trying to build a home, but you don't build a wall around yourself. Learning about the opposite, which is istikbar, learning about this and the hadith about it is like you're guarding yourself. And you're rejecting this lifestyle, and you're accepting a Islamic and a taslim and a submissive lifestyle to Allah. When we look at the narrations, there is a narration that maybe many of you have heard. It's pretty famous. It's from the Prophet. It says, Man arafa nafsa faqad arafa rabba. What does this narration mean? This narration means that whoever gains self-knowledge will also gain knowledge of his Lord. There is a relationship between knowing who you are, who man is, and a relationship between who God is. I ask you, brothers and sisters, what kind of interpretation can we have of this narration that learning more about ourselves, getting more knowledge about ourselves leads us to knowing God? One of the answers is that once you realize that you are created, you're makhluk, you're created. From this knowledge that you're created, that you're dependent on another being for existence, this leads you to Allah, which is your khaliq. So being a makhluk, created, leads you to that you need to have a creator. The fact that you look at your life and you see that everything, you do not have power over the world as you think. Your free will is very limited. There's another force out there that's administrating everything. There's, in the narration, says Dayanuddin, that is Malikul Mulk, that is owning everything, that is commanding everything, that everything is orbiting in the universe and the stars and the nature. And you see yourself, you have no power whatsoever according to this force. Therefore, from this knowledge that you're a marboob, that you are a slave of this force, and that there must be a greater force, you come to the knowledge that there must be a Lord, there must be somebody that is administrating the entire universe. So the more we come to the conclusion that we are an abd, that we are powerless, that everything we have is from Allah, We come to the fact that Allah is great, Allah is the Rabb, Allah has to give us commands, the universe is controlled by Him, and we get into these different stages of Tawhid. Therefore, the more we study about ubudiyat, that we are a slave of Allah, the more we will come to the conclusion that Allah is great and Allah is our Lord that must be followed. One of the first stages of Tawheed in this ma'rifatul nafs and ma'rifatullah is what I first mentioned, is that a person notices that there's one being that has created him, and this is called Tawhid khaliqiyat, that there's one being that created him. Second stage that he thinks about is when he looks at himself is Tawhid rububiyat, that he comes to the fact that there's only one Lord, that only one power controls everything in the universe, absolutely everything. And this is what they say the prophets have fought for, to tell the people that, why do you worship these idols? Why do you do this? They don't control anything. They don't have any power in the universe. The third stage of Tawheed, which when a person looks at himself and sees his weakness and his faqr and his dependency, is Tawheed al-Rububiyat when it comes to commands and instructions. He says, okay, if He is my Khaliq, if He created me, if He is controlling the entire universe, then He can tell me what to do. Nobody else can tell me what to do. This is Tawheed and the instructions of Allah. That He is the only power that can tell me what to do. Because He is my Creator, He is my Rabb, He is my Lord. And final, when you get into all these types of Tawheeds, after you say, He is my Creator, He is my Rabb, He is administering the world, He tells me what to do, you come to the conclusion that therefore the only person that I must worship is Allah, which is Tawhid uluhiyat. Therefore, I must worship Him. I'm not going to worship something that did not create me. I'm not going to worship something that has no power over me. So this is the final stage of Tawheed. In this, we come from ma'rifatun nafs, from myself. I notice from myself within my weakness, my faqr, and my dependency, and I notice and I develop this sense that Allah is controlling everything. This is in terms of theory. Then there's the stage of developing this in reality, and they call this knowledge by presence, by developing and witnessing this Tawheed. And this is the greatest of all Tawheeds. It's called Tawheed al-Shuhudi, is where they witness, a person truly, absolutely witnesses this khaliqiyat, this rububiyat, all of it. They witness it and they see its reality. They don't have to think about it. They see it. They see it with their heart. They see it with their spirit. Right? This is called Tawheed al-Shuhudi. My dear brothers and sisters, it's as if when we look at all of creation, there is an apparent side to all of creation, that is the side that we see. Then there's a batin, a real, the inner meaning of all of creation. Outside of all of creation, everything does its job, right? You have a chair, someone sits on it, and it supports you, and you think that that chair is supporting somebody. Zahiran it is. But look at its batin. Look inside that chair. It has dependency to Allah, and that is something that a muwahhid, someone that has recognized Allah, and through developing this connection with God, he realizes that this chair itself has this need for God. And that chair itself is yelling, Ana faqir, Ana faqir, Ana faqir. He hears it, for example. This chair is telling him, I need Allah, I need Allah. And second by second, he is seeing this, he's witnessing this. It's like, for example, they say a flag that is moving, and you think that that flag that's moving, it's moving by itself. But in reality, what is moving a flag? Wind. A power that you do not see with your eyes is moving that flag. And that is how all of creation is in its essence, is that we are all faqir and dependent to Allah, and a person that recognizes who He is will then recognize who Allah is, and then a person that develops this will witness the dependency of all of creation to Allah, second by second, millisecond by millisecond. There's no time. It's consistently dependent on Allah. They say there's this story that Shaykh Murtada Ansari, which was one of the great fuqaha, when he came to Najaf, his classes were very small at the beginning, even though he was very knowledgeable. His classes were small, and then later on, they saw what great knowledge he had. Other teachers in the Hawza, other ayatollahs came and became his student because they saw how much knowledge he has, and they had insaf. They were fair. They said, okay, he has more knowledge. They told all their other students, hey, study with Shaykh Ansari. This person is only teaching 3 people maybe. So the mother of Shaykh Ansari was a very pure lady, very, very pure person, and she did a lot of mustahabbat, a lot of great actions. She comes to Najaf after a while and notices that, wow, her son, everybody, when she comes in, everybody's respecting her. She said, you're the mother of Shaykh Ansari, you're the mother of Shaykh Ansari. So she asked her son, says, Shaykh, what's happening? How come people are giving me respect? And he was humble. He says, mother, you are a za'ir, you're a visitor of Imam Ali alayhi salam, they're respecting you. You're a visitor of Imam Ali, they're giving you respect. She says, no, there's something greater than this. There's something more to this. What is it? She says that, okay, mother, I am a marja taqleed, and you are my mother, they're giving you respect because I'm a marja. Because of her irfan, her understanding of reality, she then says, Shaykh, she says, Masa Murtada, Shaykh Murtada, what are you? Are you something? What are you? She saw immediately that even if you say you think you're a marja, you are dependent on Allah. You're a creation of Allah. What are we? Who are you? So this is the Tawhid al-Shuhudi that the mother of Shaykh Ansari had, that she saw her son, even though his own son, as being dependent on Allah. So how can somebody be arrogant if everything, their knowledge depends on Allah, their just to breathe depends on Allah? How can we be arrogant? Please give a salawat. So this relationship between abd and mawla, or between a slave and the master, is something that needs to be developed. It is something that happens, and we'll, inshallah, we're talking more about being aware of it first, and then inshallah, if there's time, we'll talk about more how we can develop this. There's different types of relationships we have as a person grows up. When somebody is a baby, the first relationship they have is with their father, or their mother or father. I'm a father, that's why I said father first, but with their mother first and then their father. Then when they grow up, maybe with their siblings, with different people, each person has its own place when somebody is growing up and they get more knowledge and they mature. And then other people in society, later on they grow up, they get familiar with the opposite sex, the other gender, and they say, what's this? And they get attracted to the other gender. And then when they get older and older, they have this other connection, which is this connection between them and God. And each one of these, say with their father, the son, father, their siblings, the family, their wife later on, each one has a specific relationship, and each one is different. You can't put this one in the other place, or say, when you say, who do you love more? Each love is specific to that relationship. But the relationship with God is very different than all the other relationships. You cannot compare it with any other relationship. And it's a relationship that slowly somebody experiences and discovers. And that is the beauty about this great religion, or this great deen, is that we discover Allah. And it is something very exciting for us, that as we practice truly and we are sincere, you develop this love for God, and you develop this relationship that you don't want to trade with anything else. And you're willing to give up everything in the world just to have this relationship. Unfortunately, in some societies, we bring God down until like He's our peer or like He's our co-worker, and we don't remember the fact that He is our Mawla, that He can take us to hell and He can take us to heaven by His wish, that we should truly be afraid of Him. True, we should be afraid of Him and also have hope in Him, but Not in a way that he is our peer or we mix it up with different relationships that we have with different people. So from this specific relationship between us and Allah, one of the things that is very important is that a person has to, at the beginning, somehow seek permission to have this and develop this relationship with Allah. And it goes both ways. And now we come to this question, is that, so we said that this is a different type of relationship. We want to develop this in the month of Ramadan. It is Shahr Allah. We develop this, and it's much easier in this month than other months. The nights of Qadr is easier than other nights. Now we have to come to ourselves and also ask this: why do we want to approach God? Why do we even want to do this? Some people want to do this for benefits for themselves, for ethical things. Say, I want to get religion, I want to come to God so I can get willpower and I can stand and I can not become alcoholic, I cannot, I won't do drugs, I can have a stable life, right? But this isn't a good intention. Even though the intention itself, the benefits when you're connected to Allah will bring this willpower, will bring you goodness. Just the fact for ethical things that I want to, for myself, just to be ethical is not a religious intention. The true reason that we should want to approach God is we want to approach God for Him Himself. I want God for God. I don't want God for anything else. That is the purest of intentions. Even though I know that if I develop this and I'm connected with unlimited knowledge and power and life, I know that I will be changed. These are benefits of it. But when I want to develop this relationship, I'm just doing it because of Him and that He deserves to be worshipped. That is how a slave looks at it. Maybe a trader, someone who does business, maybe somebody else that has a different motivation might look differently on religion or differently between themselves and God. Maybe a person just worships God to get hawa'ij and have things being done for him. But a true slave looks at Allah as, I just want God for Allah, or God for Himself. And I want God because He deserves to be worshipped. And that is very simple, and that is what a true abd does. And this is how we said in the nights before, that this is one of the greatest things when a person is an abd. This was the greatest honor for Amir al-Mu'mineen. This was the greatest glory for him to be an abd. It doesn't mean in reality that you're lowering yourself. You're lowering yourself to Allah in reality. But with these things, with this connection comes these other great things, and one of them is this honor and this glory that Allah now is, you have accepted Him, He is your Mawla, and you want to please Him. And it is something that you should be very proud of, have a lot of honor, that He is your Lord, and that you're a slave of Him. So now we come to, we said our intention, we said that this is a different relationship. And also, the next step is, how do we come close to Him? What is the way? What is the path? What is the path towards Allah? Can I make up a path? Can I make up a worship? I feel good about this worship, so I'm going to make it up. Therefore, I'm going to get close to Allah in this manner. One of the narrations from the Prophet says, "Man amila fi bid'atin khallahu ash-shaytan, khallahu lish-shaytan or ash-shaytan wal-ibadah wa algha alayhi al-khushu wal-buka." It's very interesting. It says this, that if a person wants to make something up in religion and wants to make up a path or a worship for him in Allah, Allah leaves them with shaitan, basically. Shaitan, with this, and what shaitan does is this: he makes that worship seem very pleasing for him. Now shaitan comes in this path because this isn't the instructions and commands of Allah, because we said this is the path of ubudiyyat, of being a slave and getting these instructions from God and following them. Now he's following his own thoughts, his own innovations, his own bid'at. So now shaitan comes. And when shaitan comes, he makes him get more khushu' and more buka. He makes him cry more. He makes him more humble. You might see him crying, and maybe this isn't the path of the Ahlul Bayt, but you see him crying more. He's worshiping God more, but doesn't know that that is shaitan. that is Satan. And we said this, the story of Ayatollah Zarabadi, who was a great arif, and he worshipped Allah and worshipped him, and then a man came to him and approached him and said to him this, that you don't need to do your wajibat anymore. You do not need wajibat anymore. And he says, no, I'm sure I need the wajibat, because if these obligations and instructions are from Allah, they're from the Quran and they're from the Hadith. He was a mujtahid. I'm sure these are true. And that person said, well, if you stop worshipping, if you stop doing your wajibat, if you don't stop, I'm going to take away your powers from you, these karamat that I give you. And he said, I don't care, take them. And then all those powers were taken away, and they say he heard a scream, and that was shaitan. Shaitan made him get all these different powers that he had, made him worship Allah in that specific manner, and then did all of this to raise him, his arrogance, but he wasn't arrogant. He raised him to finally one day say, you don't need ahkam anymore, you don't need Islamic law anymore. So shaitan, if we go into our own path and want to make things up and innovate things, which is called bid'ah, and leave the way that the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt and the Quran has, it has this danger that we can feel this false sense of spirituality, but at the end, it's not from God. Sometimes we might do specific actions or complete instructions in Islam, and it might not give us that buka, might not give us that crying feeling. If those that have been to Hajj, you see, Hajj is very tiring. You're not always crying to Allah. You're not always remember, you're just trying to do your wajibat. You're just trying to find that stone, somehow hit that shaitan, or do that rhyme 7 times and just get it over with, right? It doesn't feel that sometimes that's spiritual, right? But in actuality, it is very spiritual. In actuality, you're still growing, even though you might not feel it, but you're growing because you have completed the instruction of your Mawla, of your Master. That is the milak and criteria for us in our actions and our obligations, is to see if it is from Allah, because He will give us the correct path. Not to see what makes me cry more, what makes me feel better inside. No. Use our aql and logic, and use from what the Quran, and wait with what the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt said. Salamullah alayhim ajma'in. Please give me salawat. So developing this connection between us and Allah, and when I say this, I'm not coming here as Ustad, Masalan, this connection with Allah. I'm something that I've studied, looked at a little bit, and I'm sharing with you so that I can, inshallah, connect to Allah more. Sometimes when you look at our connection with God, we see that our connection is sometimes like lightning. It comes and it goes, right? And that is some of the ayahs of the Quran refer. It says stories about this. Not exactly this, but it's about when people are on a ship, and when they're in danger, they think they're going to drown. They start doing dua with ikhlas with Allah. They connect with Allah, and then when they are saved, they forget about Him. So sometimes our relationship or connection with Allah is like lightning. It comes, it's very strong, but then it goes. The point is to try to have this connection always be full of light, to have it be like the sun consistently throughout the day and throughout the night, not to come and go. And how this is done is through, first of all, having our heart empty of other things besides Allah. So this connection, Allah can, and this connection we have with God can slowly and slowly come in our hearts. When a person is born as a child, they might have their relationship with God might be like a dim light, because everyone has fitra, it's inside us. It's in the nature of humans, the connection with God. It might be like a dim light, like a candle. And slowly, as we develop this connection with God, it will become brighter and brighter, and also be more continuous, more continuous. And what we strive as Muslims, as an abd throughout the day, is to make this light and this nur continue the whole day. The more this connection continues, the more we are remembering Allah. And the brighter that it is, the more solid it is, the better of a connection we have with God. If we don't have this connection, or if we don't have a strong connection, everlasting connection, if we fill our hearts, if our hearts is vacant of this connection, what happens? Sometimes you see young people with young hearts, they fall in love with somebody. They fall in love, they have what's called ishq, right? They have love, they fall in love with somebody. In the narrations, it's very interesting that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says that this ishq, when somebody loves somebody else, right? They're young, they fall in love, and they think that their entire world is just this person, even though it's good to love your spouse and good to love your wife, but with aql, with logic, right? At the same time, you have emotions and you also have logic. But you see some people, they lose their mind. You can't even talk to them anymore. They're completely in love. I'm not trying to reject love, or I'm talking about a false love that's not a love that's not regulated with the aql. That's what I'm talking about. It says, Sa'altu Abu Abdullah an al-ishq, this narration. I asked Imam Sadiq alayhi salam about ishq. He says something very interesting. He says, Kalam is nur. He says, قَالَ قُلُوبٌ خَلَتْ مِنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. That's ishq. Hearts that are vacant from remembering Allah. فَأَذَاغَهَا اللَّهُ حُبَّهُ حُبَّ غَيْرِهِ. So Allah made him taste the love of others. So this false type of love, if our heart, one of the devastating effects of not connecting, strong connection with Allah, continuous connection with Allah, is our heart will now be open and susceptible to any type of love. It'll be empty. So when somebody comes, right, and it might not make sense in any form or way, they're just kind to us, they say kind words, somebody falls in love, and Allah is giving you that taste. Why? Because your heart was empty. When you see a bottle, if it's full, they say there's air inside, right? When the water is full, there's no room for air. If our hearts are full with Allah, there's no room for air, for this hawa they call, hawa nafs, to love other things. But because it's empty, we didn't have that connection, it's very susceptible to other types of love. That should be enough for tonight, so that we can, inshallah, develop this. And the best way we can dim the lights, the best way we can bring this connection, develop it, because it is not something easy, is through the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, salamullah alayhim ajma'in. Please give us salawat. One of the greatest servants of Allah, because we talked about the month of Ramadan is the month of Imam Hussein alayhi salam also. In the beginning, there's Ziyarat Imam Hussein. In the middle, there's Ziyarat Imam Hussein. Nights of Qadr, there's Ziyarat Imam Hussein. And in Eid al-Fitr, there's also Ziyarat of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But Imam Hussein himself was humble to his older brother, Imam Hassan alayhi salam. That people that cry for Imam Hassan, they won't cry in the Day of Judgment. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, the first child of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha. So tonight we'll come to the doors humbly of the truest servants of Allah, a person that when he did wudu, he would do ablution of Allah, the color would change and he would tremble. He would tremble and shake before he even started his prayers, just doing wudu. This is Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Imam Hassan, besides his worship, his ubudiyat, his ibadat, he was also very madloom and very betrayed. Many people betrayed him. From the general of his army that betrayed him from Muawiyah for money, betrayed him. That they came to him and stabbed a dagger at him in his leg. When they took away the sajjada, his prayer mat, his own army began to betray him, that he was forced into having a peace treaty with Muawiyah. His wife, what is one of the worst betrayers is if a person's wife betrays you. His wife Ju'da, that poisoned him. Not even those that when he came after he was martyred and his wife killed him, when they came to bury him, they betrayed him and struck arrows at his dead body. After he was dead and martyred, his sons, Qasim and Abdullah, beautiful sons that he had, very young, defended their great uncle and defended their imam. They had ma'rifatul imam. They understood imamat. one of his sons, Abdullah, which was about 10 or 11 years old, was so young that when he came to battle, they came, and as some of the stories go, they came to give him armor, but he was so small and so young, armor did not fit him. And there his aunt Zainab, salamullah alayha, comes to take him away. I do not want you to fight in this battle. He's too young. He's 10, 11 years old against these huge monsters. But he keeps refusing. Imam Hussein alayhi salam tells his sister, "Ahsabihi ya ukhti," take him, grab him, don't let him fight. فَأَبَى وَأَمْتَنَعَ عَلَيْهَا إِمْتِنَاءً شَدِيدًا. He didn't allow, he was refused. He says that, وَقَالَ وَاللَّهِ لَا أُفَارِغُ عَمِّي. I'm not going to leave my uncle. There, at that stage, Abjar ibn Ka'b comes to strike Imam Hussein. But this pure child blocks the hit with his arm, and his arm gets hit and begins to dangle in the air from the skin. بِيَدِهِ فَأَتَنَّهَا إِلَى الْجِلْدَةِ فَإِذَا يَدُهُ مُعَلَّقَةٌ. His hand is now in the air. It's hanging by the skin. وَنَادَى الْغُلَامِ. This child says, يَا أُمَّتَا فَأَخَذَهُ الْحُسَيْنِ. There Imam Hussein comes quickly to him, to Abdullah, the orphan. فَضَمَّهُ إِلَيْهِ. And begins, he grabs him. وَقَالَ يَا ابْنَ أَخِي. Oh, son of my brother, اصبر, have patience, على ما نزل بك, upon what happened to you. وَاحْتَسِبْ فِي ذَلِكَ الْخَيْرِ. What you're going to see, what you're going to meet is better than what you're at right now, what will happen to you. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah al-Husayn. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Please recite a salawat. Ya Allah, we ask you in the honor of Imam Hassan, the orphans and the children of Imam Hassan, to give us, inshallah, the maqam of true ubudiyat and servitude. Ya Allah, we ask you in this month of Ramadan, which is Shahr Allah, give us a deep, a solid connection to our Master Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us a continuous connection with Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you, those that are sick, those that need our du'as, those that are in poverty, those that have problems, they're in countries where it's war-torn and they need our du'as, to give them relief, inshallah. Our family members that have passed away, our friends and family that have passed away, please, Allah, give them mercy, inshallah. Please hasten the return of the 12th Imam and make us of his companions in the occultation and also in his reappearance. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ahli bayti at-tayyibin at-tahirin.